The Iron Woman, Chapter 4. Next morning, Hogarth and Lucy were up early. They planned what they were going to do. Lucy left a note for her parents. When the TV people came to interview me, tell them I'll be at the factory gate at 12 o'clock sharp. Soon they were climbing up towards the woods behind the town. They scrambled over a brambly bank and were among the trees. Look, hissed Hogarth. He was pointing at the ground. Lucy gazed at the deep, huge prints in the soft mould. The Iron Man. No toes, you see. Your Iron Man woman has toes. The track led up through the wood to the field above that climbed to a hilltop, and there they were, sitting facing each other, two colossal figures, their backs to the holes of the great cedars that grew among the ancient stones of the hill's very crown. We're here, yelled Lucy and ran towards them. It's us! The immense heads turned. Iron Man, shouted Hogarth. I knew you'd make it. Lucy told them everything that had happened, the fight in the offices, the journalists, the television crew coming today. The enormous eyes glowed. The Iron Man's glowed amber, the Iron Woman's glowed black. But no sound came out of either of them. Why don't you come and let the TV people see you? Cried Hogarth. You'd give them the screams on television. Then they'd believe you. Everything would have to change. Oh, yes, you must come, cried Lucy. Just the sight of you. A humming started up within the Iron Woman. Nothing would change, came the deep, rumbling, gentle voice. Lucy and Hogarth stared at her. What did that mean? Weren't the screams going to change everybody? And the sight of the Iron Woman, a giant scream transmitter, wouldn't that change everything? It needs something more, said the great voice up through their soul slows. Hogarth and Lucy were baffled. How could there be anything more? So what do we do? Cried Hogarth. The rumbling started again, and the voice came again. Do? And then again louder. Do? Then with a roar. Do? And Lucy and Hogarth almost fell over backwards as the Iron Woman, in one terrific heave, got to her feet. Branches were torn off as she rose erect amongst the cedars, and her arms rose slowly above her head. Her fists clenched and unclenched, shooting her fingers out straight, then clenched again. She lifted one foot. Her knee came up. Then, boom! Her foot crashed down. The whole hilltop shook, and the sound echoed her giant iron body as if it were a drum. Again the other foot came up and down. Boom! Ripping the boughs aside, her fists clenching and unclenching, her feet rising and falling. Iron Woman had begun to dance. There, in the copse, in a shower of twigs, pine cones, pine needles, and small branches, she revolved in her huge stamping dance in front of the Iron Man, whose eyes glowed bright gold. And she sang, in that deep, groaning, thundering voice of hers, destroying the ignorant ones, nothing can change them, destroy them. She went on repeating that over and over, in time to her pounding footfalls. As she turned round and round, Lucy hid her mouth behind her clenched fists. The Iron Woman was terrifying. She was overwhelming. She was tremendous. Give them a chance, screamed Lucy. Let's see what they say today. They might have changed already. She just yelled it out on the top of her voice. Her father was one of the ignorant ones, according to the Iron Woman, but it was no good. The giant dancer eyes were glowing dark red. She stamped each foot down as she wanted to shatter the whole leg. Nothing will change. Only their words change. They will never change. Only their words change. Only their words, only their words, only their words. Then her voice became simply a roar. And now it seemed to Hogarth that inside her roar he could hear the scream, the wailing and the crying of all the creatures roaring out of the woods. And again he began to see the faces, large, small, tiny, the wide mouths, the terrible eyes of scream. But now the Iron Man was getting up, and he suddenly spoke. His voice was no louder as the Iron Woman's. His voice was not so loud as the Iron Woman's, but it was harsher, more piercing. I have an idea, and he held up his arm. The Iron Woman had stopped. Slowly she lowered her feet, but her eyes, fixed on the Iron Man, glowed as red as ever. Destroying them is no good, he said in his dry, grating voice. Lucy heard all the cobs of it, like they were stiff because he spoke so rarely. You could not destroy them all, he went on. Now everything would be rebuilt as before, new factories and old poisons, new people, the old stupidity. Nothing would be changed. The Iron Woman's eyes darkened, and down below, close to the ground, the two pairs of human eyes stared up, round as eyes of two rabbits. Listen to me now, said the Iron Man. But instead of speaking, he took the Iron Woman's hand and seemed to listen. Just as I thought, he said. The scream is terrible, but yet it needs something extra. Then he took the Ironwoman's other hand with his other hand, and he was holding both her hands in his. All this time he must have been hearing the cry of the creatures through his hands. Now he craned his head backwards and looked up to the sky. Lucy could see his eyes too had become red, and so fierce that a red beam was coming from them, quite clear and strong, even in the bright morning light. For 2 or 3 minutes nothing happened. "What's he doing now?" whispered Hogarth. But Lucy was looking up at the sky. Only a little patch of blue showed, away to the south. The rest was cloud, was quite bright, an even crumpled layer. And yet something funny was going on directly above. It looked like a darker dot spinning. "Is that a bird?" whispered Lucy, pointing up. No, it was a small dark cloud. Already it seemed to have an odd shape. It seemed to be lowering in a strange spinning wisp of itself, a spinning tail of cloud. And the whole cloud seemed to be growing as it came lower and lower. It looked like a pictures of a water spout at sea, but it wasn't whirling upwards, it was spiralling downwards, worming its way towards them. As it came, they heard a faint roar, like a far-off sound of a big aircraft behind the clouds. This is what Hogarth thought it was. But then he realised the sound was coming from the whirling corkscrew of gloom as it descended louder and louder. And now the tip of it was only just above the Iron Woman's head, and there it stayed for a while, like a long spinning top writhing and roaring, or like a machine drill about to be lowered. The roar was now stupefying, like the roar of a jet plane as it whirled towards the runway for take-off. Lucy and Hogarth covered their ears. The din was painful, and now it seemed they could see something strange in the spinning cone, as if it kept stopping just for a moment, like a skater spinning in the toe of one skate, who stops for a fraction of a second at each revolution. And just as you get a fleeting but quite clear glimpse of the whirling dancer's face, in that momentary stop, so now Lucy and Hogarth saw in the towering tornado clouds scales. Yes, there it was, just a glimpse, and another, scales. But now the most astonishing thing had happened. The spinning dark column of scales touched the Iron Woman with its drill point. It touched the top of her head. Immediately her body seemed to begin to disappear. Actually, it began to vibrate. Her body became a blur of vibrations. The Iron Man's hands were still gripping hers, also disappeared in a blur. As she vibrated, the whirling tower of darkness and scales was pouring into the Iron Woman, and it poured into her. It seemed to grow. For a minute after minute it went on. More and more darkness came down the spinning cone. The blurred mass of the Iron Woman grew bigger and began to glow blue, and still it went on, till they saw the upper end of whatever it was lashing in the sky, like a great tail, still pouring down on the Iron Woman as it was coming to an end. The roar grew screechier, suddenly, then a thin, ripping scream, like an express train piling into a tunnel too small for it. That lavishing tail dived into the Iron Woman and vanished. The instant silence was shocking. Her shape had reappeared, but now twice as big as it had been, and glowing blue like the glass of a blue lamp. The Iron Man, his arms reaching up, still held her hands as they watched. She darkened, and she darkened, and she shrank. At last she was her normal size again, and the Iron Man released her. "Now," he said, grinding her voice box, "now you have all the power of the space-bat dragon angel. My mighty slave from the depths of the universe. It has packed itself inside of you. It has become your power." The Iron Woman did not move. She seemed stunned by what had happened to her. Her eyes were half closed, gazing at the Iron Man, who spoke again. "Whatever you want to do, you can probably do it. The power of the space-bat angel dragon is almost infinitive. Be careful what you wish for, because now it will come true. Its power," said the Iron Man, "is unearthly." The Iron Woman laughed softly. She laughed again, more strongly. A rumbling, low laugh. She laughed again, louder. She turned away abruptly and gazed out over the woods towards the town. Lucy could see she had obviously made up her mind about something. "What will you do?" cried Lucy. Lucy was thinking of her father. She was suddenly afraid of what the Iron Woman might do to him, along with his workmates. The Iron Woman looked down at her. Instead of black or red, her eyes were now deep, dark, fiery blue, and all of her body, it seemed to Lucy, was blacker, so black it was almost blue. But the Iron Woman only said, "It is almost midday. Go and give your interview to the television crew at the gate of the factory." And again she laughed, her rumbling, strange laugh that seemed to shrink away in the earth. Lucy and Hogarth set off down the hill. Minutes later they saw the TV vans, the cameras, and the small crowd gathering for them at the factory gate, and their hearts sank. This was going to be difficult. Remember the scream, said Lucy. End of chapter 4.